Some of the most beautiful moments in your life, were you able to predict them? Were you able to see that they were coming? Were you able to control them into being? The answer is probably not, right? And so how is that possible? It's possible because when your ego is not in the driver's seat, something else takes over. The way that I operate today is I listen to my intuition. And when I'm disconnected from my intuition, my job is to come back into my soul center.
Welcome to It's Not What You Think, the podcast that takes you on a transformative journey to rewrite your story of greatness and reawaken your soul's purpose. I'm your host, Celine DaCosta, a subconscious mind expert, master coach, and believer in the limitless power and magic that lives within all of us. My intention in this podcast is to propel you into your next level of success so that you are free to create the life that your heart most desires. Through deep, actionable insights, personal stories, and world-class guests, I'll provide you with the tools, strategies, and resources you need to unlock the fullest expression of who you're meant to be in this lifetime so that you can consciously design a reality that is beyond what you could have ever dreamed of. Join me on this journey to personal growth and evolution, and let's live our lives in accordance with our highest soul's calling. This podcast is your weekly check-in to help this path become more simple, obtainable, and fun. Thank you for tuning in today, and now let's dive in.
Hello, everyone. Today, I want to talk about knowing the difference between your ego and your soul. This is a topic that is really near and dear to my heart because of how frequently it comes up in my work. And not only that, how important of a topic it is that I am finding, unfortunately, most people on the planet aren't talking too much about it and definitely don't know the difference. So, for context, this whole dialogue around ego and soul, just what is it really like? What does it mean to have an ego and to have a soul? So in this episode, there's a few things I want to cover. First of all, I just want to demystify what I mean when I say ego, what I mean by soul. So we're on the same page in terms of terminology. I want to share about why it's important and the ways that I found that it's important, not just in my own life, but in the many, many people that I've coached. Like, what is the ego and soul in their life, and why is it so crucial to really be able to discern the difference? And then I want to go into really depicting some examples of what this could look like and how living a life where you are not only understanding the language of your soul and being able to know the difference between is the soul speaking or the ego speaking, but also to be able to really listen to your soul. Like, how can your life look like when you do more of that? So without further ado, let's dive in. So ego and soul, let's just define what I am referring to when I am using this terminology. So when I talk about the ego, what I am speaking to specifically is the personality that we create growing up as a result of our past conditioning, environmental, cultural, socioeconomic, familial, relational. So the short version is, who did we become as a result of the way that we were raised and what we were taught to believe? And that's really what I mean when I say the ego. It's the personality. Anything that comes after I am dot, dot, dot. I use myself as an example. I'm Italian. I am a daughter. I am a fan of the color blue. I am a coach. I am, I don't know, wearing a blue shirt, and so on and so forth. So you're getting the gist. Anything that comes after I am dot, dot, dot is essentially the identity that your ego is creating. And so when we start to create this identity of ourselves, it becomes the personality then we start to refer to as our name. So Celine is Celine is Italian. Celine has lived in X amount of countries. Like, Celine travels the world. Celine is a coach. Celine has coached these kind of people. Like, Celine has this podcast. Celine is talking right now. That is all the personality that is the ego. And similar to how we assign ourselves a personality, we also assign other people a personality, like, I don't know, Sarah. Oh, Sarah loves pink, and Sarah is a therapist. And, Sarah, she really loves to dance. And we also give other people, essentially, we look at their ego and then we create an entire definition of who that person is based on what their ego is showing us. There's another term that we can also use that does not equal the ego, but it's important to understand this term, as I will also be referencing it throughout this episode, which is the term is character armor. Now, it doesn't come top of mind who coined this. I believe it was Carl Jung, but what he also talks about character armor, which is essentially the personality that we put on to defend ourselves from the version of us that we were not allowed to be. So to give you an example of this is the woman, this is super common, which is a woman who growing up in her household, she wasn't allowed to be emotional. She wasn't allowed to express her true emotions with people. And so what she decided to do is to overcompensate for the lack of emotional expression that she was able to safely share in her household. She will overcompensate for that by creating a really I'm a tough woman and I don't need anyone and I'm really strong and independent and screw any man, especially if she had issues where her father walked out on her or she had a non-present father figure. She will overcompensate by becoming the strong, independent, overworking woman that doesn't need no man. And that isn't actually her true nature necessarily, but it's the character armor that she developed to arm herself to really a defense mechanism that she created in order to arm herself from actually facing the reality of being a very emotional, sensitive woman who didn't have a safe space to feel her emotions. And so instead of dealing with that pain, because a lot of us when we're younger and we're growing up and we're developing all this character armor, we don't actually know how to deal with the trauma in real time. We don't know how to deal with the pain. We don't know how to deal with the difficulty of our situation. So instead, our ego will create a character armor that then we use to shape what our character is. And then, this can get really, really sophisticated. And then you create this entire character armor that isn't even who you really are. And so you start living your life not in alignment to who you really are. So for example, the strong, independent woman who works all the time and doesn't need no man, but actually truly in reality wants a man and would love to be supported and would love to not be the breadwinner in a relationship, but also be an equal partner, or even have the man take care of her. But she won't allow herself to feel that because her character armor is in conflict with her true desires. So that is, a very, very quick overview on a really profound and layered psychological topic that we're going to be covering a lot in the course of these episodes. So when I speak to ego specifically, what I'm not, and the reason why I said ego does not equal character armor is because a lot of people demonize the ego and they say, oh, the ego, my ego is so bad, or my ego is evil, my ego is getting in the way. And the ego is it's not good or bad. It is simply what, I forgot who said this again. I don't have all these, I read a lot, so they all start mixing with each other. But there's another really known psychologist that calls it's the little you. It's the little you that is just this construct of you that you've created that by nature is limited. The ego by nature is limited because it is just this personality complex. It is this collective of thoughts, belief systems, and perceptions and identifications that you have created in your lifetime based on what you believe to be true up until this point. And a lot of it has been shaped by your past. A lot of it has been shaped by how you grew up and the environment you grew up in and everything I shared before. So based on your ego, you have this personality that has been created by you, but by its very nature is extremely limited. Because like I said, it's limited by your past. It's limited by what you know. And it doesn't know what you don't know, which is, a lot. There's a lot of things we don't know. There's a lot of things that we are not even aware of in this moment. And so the ego in the everyday life in everyday life, the ego is often the one that is in the driver's wheel, at least for, I would say, most of society. We live very ego-driven lives. And the ego has its own qualities. You know, the ego is something that it needs to, by its very nature, the ego wants to survive. The ego wants to keep its identity alive. That is its job. And our brain is designed for protection. It's designed for survival. And it's designed to keep this ego alive. And so that is where you'll see a lot of the terminology like ego validation. What does ego validation mean? Is that we seek the experiences and the belief systems that validate and confirm our reality. A really big example of this is, for example, I don't know if you've seen like a football, I'm talking about not American football or European, like soccer football game, and people go mad. People go mad. Because like, you know, one person identifies with team A and their ego says, I'm originally from Rome, by the way. So I'm going to use, there's Roma and Lazio in Italy. Those are two big football teams that are competing. And there's like this huge separation in Rome around like, are you a Roma fan or are you a Lazio fan? And so you go to these games and it's like such a funny, like, depiction. It's almost like a caricature depiction of how this works, which is you have the people that are rooting for Roma, and then you have the ones that are rooting for Lazio, and the fans that are identified with Roma are so freaking nuts about Roma, and they're just defending Roma. And it's like in that moment, Roma is their identity. And if anyone dares to question how amazing Roma is, like if the Lazio fan comes in, they're going to come at it because they need to defend. They need to fight. They need to make sure that their identity of Roma being a superior team stays alive because it's part of their identification that they have created with their ego, which at some point in time, maybe because their parents were rooting for this team since they were a child, the ego said that I am a fan of this team and that is my belief system, and anyone who dares to challenge that belief system is a loser, is my enemy, is going to get like hit, you know, or like I'm going to fight them. And we do this in all areas of our life. You know, I don't know if, you know, depending, it could be your country, like somebody is talking smack about your country and you're like, you can't talk about my country like that. And they're talking about a country that, you know, it's not even about you, the topic. And then you go and you get really defensive and you get really mad, you know, or somebody talks about your favorite food in a way that you don't appreciate, or some, you know, maybe you're vegan. I've real life experience. Like I'm talking to a vegan and God forbid I'll make a quip about meat or anything like that. And it starts this entire argument about why the animal kingdom and things like that, that it wasn't even like, it's like we were talking about food or something like that. And then because someone who's vegan is so attached to their egoic identification of being a vegan, that anyone that is not a vegan is an enemy, rather than, for example, opening up a conversation, like an open-minded conversation about, hey, well, why is it that you're choosing to eat meat? Like, or, oh, why does this matter so much to you? Like from a curious, open-minded space, as opposed to I need to defend my identity and I need to defend that my identity is the correct identity to have. And so all of that being said, your ego is there to reaffirm itself, to validate itself that it is like, it gets to exist, that it is existent and it gets to continue existing. Because the ego's biggest fear is annihilation. It's death, right? And that's why even in the spiritual community, you might have heard the term ego death and how freaking painful it is, especially for people who are super attached to their ego, which is normal. Like in the beginning of our journey, especially, you know, if you're on a spiritual journey, the biggest ego deaths, I believe, are the ones where we have the most attachment to who we thought we were or how we thought reality was going to need it to be, you know? And ideally, as you start to understand that reality is actually fluid and you are the creator of your reality and it doesn't have to be so fixed and you're everything and nothing at the same time, once that starts to really sink in, then we get less attached to, you know, the ego, and the ego deaths as a result become less painful because it's less painful to let go of that identity. But unfortunately, until we actually get this, ego deaths can be quite painful because you're literally coming up against your biggest fear in life, your ego's biggest fear, which is to die, to be like, oh, I thought I was going to be in corporate my whole life, but actually I can't be another day in corporate. It's become very clear to me, but now I have to reconstruct this entire identity around being a business owner. Or I thought that this person was my soulmate for the past 10 years. And I was convinced, and that was, my ego was identifying that this is the person that I'm going to be with forever and ever and ever. And now there's been a rupture that is irreparable, and I'm realizing this is not the person for me. And now I need to go through this entire deconstruction of my ego being identified as like one half of this person. And now I need to reclaim myself and be who I am, and actually choose a soulmate that is going to support me and actually be a better fit for me in the future that I am creating. So those are just two examples, but it's this feeling of, holy moly, I thought this, and now I'm not this anymore. And therefore I need to reconstruct my entire reality to fit into this new identity that I'm realizing that is actually closer to who I really am. And so the ego in itself is actually an illusion. It is what we're gonna get real metaphysical here. But the ego, in the way that it's been taught, especially in shamanic traditions, is that it's just this illusion, and it's what holds your physical 3D reality together. And as you're, operating in the matrix, which is just this physical material reality, it's consciousness consolidated into denser form that we call reality, that we call, like, this is my arm, this is a microphone, this is a camera, this is a phone. Like, it's just consciousness vibrating at a denser reality until it becomes 3-dimensional, physical, material reality that we are experiencing now with our senses. And in that, our ego is the dude or the gal that says, okay, I'm going to go and eat a salad because I'm identifying as a healthy person. I'm going to go and, book this therapy session because I want to work on myself, because I like self-improvement. I'm going to go on a date with this person because I date this kind of person, and these are the kind of people I like to date. And so it's like our avatar that we use to move around reality, to really interact with time and space. But in its very essence, like, our ego is an illusion, and it's just the materialization, a very limited materialization of what all that we actually are. Which brings me to the next topic, which is, okay, so now we've identified what the quote unquote ego is. So what is the soul? When we talk about soul, what is it that we're referring to? And just a quick disclaimer, like, I am not sitting here claiming that I know the entire psychology of soul, what soul is. I am but a fractile of God, as we all are. We're just fractals. I am not all knowing. I am not all seeing. So as I'm sharing about soul, please know that this is my experience of what I understand soul to be through my system. And this is just my interpretation as I can best articulate it. And just know that if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I don't agree with that, or I think soul is this, totally respect your opinion. I'm not saying that my opinion is the one, but I am offering you, at the very least, my perspective and my experience in the framework of what we're talking about today. So when I'm speaking to soul, the soul is the unseen essence that is you. It's like, it's your light. It's your soul essence. It can't, there's no space. It can't be touched. It can't be contained. It doesn't it's not physical. It's actually beyond the physical. And so when we're talking about your soul, this is really the essence of who you are in your core. It's your purest light. And if we want to take it even a step further, your soul is just a ray of the sunshine that is God, universe, almighty, the quantum field, whatever name that you want to give it to. There is undeniably there's a force that is so much bigger than us. And when we look at, for example, the composition of an atom, which is what every single thing in our physical reality is constructed of, we look at an atom, it's 99.999999979% energy. in then 0.00, 6 zeros, physical matter. It's matter. So an atom is mostly air and just a fractile of matter. So if we take that and we, from microcosm to macrocosm, and you look at this physical body that you are, like the material reality that you're seeing around you is only a tiny, 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 tiny fraction of reality, because there's still 99.99999% of reality that cannot be seen. That's just energy and space around us. And so when you start to really perceive reality in that way, it's like, oh, what else is out there other than, the food I'm eating and the clothes I'm wearing and the computer that I'm messaging on, the phone that I'm watching this little video on, this thing that I'm recording a podcast on. Like, there's clearly so much more, like way more than the mind could ever comprehend. But it's still reality, which means that whatever your ego is picking up on and whatever your ego is moving through time and space with is just a tiny, 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 tiny fraction of reality. And so when we start to really get connected to the bigness and the unknown that is our unseen realms, that is most of reality, then it's like, oh, okay, there's a lot going on here that I wasn't aware of, and your soul is that part of you that lights up this avatar that we call the body and the ego, this personality that the mind has created. Like, there is a life force that runs through us. There is an energy that keeps this animal body moving. It keeps it alive. Like, hello, how are you? Like, how am I moving my hand right now? Like, there's an essence within me that is alive, that is allowing me to be constructing reality as I speak. And so the soul is this essence. It's your light. It's that knowing in you that is beyond the knowing of your mind. And the soul, as I've experienced it, is connected to everything else. Like, we as souls, we are all fractiles of a bigger being, of a bigger sense of self, and these, as this fractile, as me, I'm here as embodied, as the soul, I am the soul embodied as Celine DaCosta, the ego. And so the ego is just a physical manifestation, a very, very tiny fractal physical manifestation of all that I really am and who I be. And from that space, when we start to actually reconnect to our soul essence, what we do is we gain access to parts of ourselves that our ego can't even try to think about, can't even try to imagine right now. And so when I talk about, and this is a conversation that comes up so much because this is a core foundation of the work that I do with my clients as well. When I start working with clients, whether they're coming to me because they want to build a more powerful brand for their business, or they want to grow their business to the next level, or they want support with, I work with a lot of busy corporate executives and CEOs who have built a successful business, but they don't feel alive within the business. They're not happy within the business. So they need to reconstruct their life and really redesign their life to accommodate what their bigger vision of who they know they are and who they're growing into to be. And when I'm working with them, one of the foundational pieces of our work is like, we need to understand who is in the driver's seat. When is it your ego and when is it your soul? Because your ego is the one that is going to be setting the limitations. Your ego is the one that's going to be in survival mode. Your ego is the one that's going to tell you like what you can't do. And your soul is the one that is connected to the quantum field. Your soul is the one that's connected to the universe, to God consciousness. And when you start to follow your soul, then you are connecting to the unknown and the unseen, and you're actually connecting to the story of your destiny that is so much bigger than what you could ever calculate or logically predict. I mean, think about it. How many times have you been in a position in your life where you're trying to control a situation and you're pushing and it's not going well and you think you know what's best, and then the moment you let go, life just works out for you and something bigger than you've ever imagined happens? Like, think about the most amazing things that have happened in your life, whether it's, meeting your soulmate at a coffee shop or serendipitously stumbling upon a business idea, or somebody who later became a business partner, or meeting a friend at a yoga class that became, somebody who the maid of honor at your wedding, and these beautiful moments in life, some of the most beautiful moments in your life, were you able to predict them? Were you able to see that they were coming? Were you able to control them into being? The answer is probably not, right? And so how is that possible? It's possible because when your ego is not in the driver's seat, something else takes over, right? And when you're open to it, something else takes over. When you're connected to your soul, life starts to work for you very effortlessly. And you start to naturally magnetize into your life these events, these people, these situations that you never, ever could have even thought about. Even in your wildest dreams, you couldn't have planned it. And when you're able to do that, or to flow, go with the flow of life, your soul can lead you in these really magical places. These really, really magical places. And I'm going to take it a step further, which is that your soul can actually, when you follow your soul and when you follow the essence that is your true light essence, and you really, truly start to listen to that, what it's going to lead you to is what I refer to your highest possible soul destiny. Whatever your soul has come here on this planet to experience, to unfold, to witness in this lifetime, there is, at least I believe, there's a bigger plan for you. There's a bigger plan for you than waking up every day, eating breakfast, screaming kids, I gotta go to work, driving to work, oh my God, so much traffic, clocking in 8 hours a day, coming home, I'm tired, I'm gonna watch Netflix, turn on, nothing good's on, okay, I'm gonna eat some chips, I'm really tired, I'm gonna sleep, and then I'm gonna do it all over again. That's not life. That's not what life is here to do for you and create and co-create with you, right? And if you're listening to this podcast, if you've made it this far, I think deep down, you know that. You know that there's more to life. So what is it? Well, I can't tell you because you need to discover it. So how can you discover what is the highest potential that you are here to unlock in this lifetime? How do you do it? Step one is you need to be connected to your soul, and you need to listen to what your soul is here to tell you, and not the ways that your ego is here to limit you, because your ego is here to protect you. It's here to validate itself. It's here to prevent its own annihilation. And so it will hold you back from doing things and being things that in your soul you know are right for you and you know you need to do, but then you won't do them because your ego's like, I can't possibly quit my corporate job and come start my own business. That means death. I can't possibly go all in this relationship and give it my all when I've been hurt before. That means death. I can't possibly, move to another country and start a new life over because I've always dreamed of going into Europe. That means death. So anything that is a really big, shocking change means death. Even when your soul's telling you to go, your ego will say, hell no, you're not going, because we need to keep ourselves alive. And your identity is that you're a corporate person. Your identity is that you're a single person. Your identity is that you live in this country. And if you do anything to break this identity, I will make your life hell with self-doubt. I will make your life hell by creating all this chaos that doesn't need to be there, but I'm going to create it anyway. And I'm just going to make your life really complicated until you give up on that dream. Sound familiar? I mean, I know it was with me. Definitely with me, I've had to learn this lesson over and 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 over again, right? And here's the thing, when clients come to me and once this part clicks in, which is the part of, okay, I'm sold. I want to live a life according to my soul. Why do I want to do that? Because when I live according to my soul, when I live in alignment to my soul, and I start to listen to this part of myself that is really connected to the all-knowing, to the all-pervasive, to source, and I start to follow my own essence, life works out better, and it works out exactly the way that it needs to for me in my highest possible potential in this lifetime. Isn't that amazing? Wouldn't that be great to live life like that? And you can, by the way, it's completely available. And that's why you're listening to this episode. And so when you start to choose it that way, okay, the next step and where I see people really stumbling is, okay, Celine, I'm sold. But how the heck? Because this soul thing sounds really fluffy and I cannot wrap my head around it. So no problem. One of my superpowers, and you're going to experience this again and again and again should you choose to continue listening to this podcast, is let me land all the stuff that is all up in the ethers. I want to make it really practical and tangible for you so you can go off and that your ego, hopefully I can sell your ego on this so it can start expanding itself and doing things a little differently. How does that sound? So the first piece is really understanding the difference between soul and ego and starting to get a very visceral understanding of who is in charge. Who is in charge? Who's in the driver's seat? Is it your ego? Is it your soul? So this is one of the things I actually teach in one of my programs, which is called The Journey. And this is my 12-month container to, guide people through the journey back to themselves. And one of like the core modules that people watch is really understanding the difference between the ego and the soul. And one of the things that I talk about is the language, the soul speaks and ego speaks. So you need to start to understand the dialect that these parts of you, and I don't even like to say the word parts because soul is all pervasive, but just to make life easy, I'm just going to call them parts right now. And so it's really important to understand how these different parts of you operate and what is their dialect. How do they speak? Yeah. So when it comes to the ego is the one that says, I can't, I don't know how to, this isn't possible, but what if, this seems, I'm going to try. I don't know about this. Oh yeah, that sounds good, but insert limitation. So the ego, by the nature of its very language, operates in limitation. Yeah. And then the soul is the one that says, yes, I can create, I am able. And then what else? You know what would be fun? You know what's possible? How can I expand my reality? What other aspect of me can I uncover? Can I discover? What other parts of me can I unfold into at this time? It's a different frequency. It's a different voice and it's a different narrative that's happening. And, one of the things that I also teach my clients and I talk about a lot, which is that your intuition, I refer to my intuition as the language of my soul. So my ego speaks English, it speaks Portuguese, it speaks Spanish, it speaks Italian, it speaks, musical notes. That's also a soul language, music, by the way. But from an egoic standpoint, it's like I can read music. I can read Italian, Portuguese, Spanish, and these languages. I can literally read a little bit of French. So when I'm speaking to myself, it is happening in my mind, which is the primary residence of the ego. And it looks like a voice that is coming through in English or it's coming through in Spanish or whatever language is coming through, depending on my mood. And when we talk about then the soul speaks in intuition. And it's a feeling that comes deep, like in your gut, it's just an innate knowing, which I'm sure you've all experienced. Whether you listen to your intuition is a completely different story and probably an episode for another time. But it is this innate gnosis, this knowing, deeper knowing that comes from, it comes from the quantum. It comes from the unseen, the unknown, right? We don't know where it comes from. It comes from oneness. And so the intuition has a different, the way it speaks, it's a different texture, it's a different feeling, it's a different way of communicating than the narrative, the voices in your head, which so often those voices in your head, they tend to model like voices of, for example, the inner critic. It tends to very frequently model the voices of your parents or people who criticized you when you were younger. If you actually notice your inner critic so many times, I know my inner critic sounds so much like one of my parents that shall not be named in this moment in time. But it's like I can literally hear this parent like speaking to me when I'm criticizing myself or when my ego voice like really gets activated. So, when you're speaking to yourself, it's important to start becoming aware of how you're speaking to yourself. And, I would like to give a tangible example of a way that I really, really see like soul versus ego show up a lot. And that is on the topic of money. Oh my God. I see this over and over again, especially, when people are considering working with me or when I'm considering working with people. Before I knew what I'm sharing with you now, this was such a frequent occurrence for me where, for example, I would be really intrigued to invest in a retreat or a coach. And I would say to myself, oh my God, I really want to work with this person. I know this person has like the codes for me. Like I know in my heart that this person is somebody that I want to learn from and that I want to work with. And then, I would then go and either have a discovery call with this person or look at their website. And they would give me a quote of a price that I was like, oh, whoa, that is way above my pay grade, right? And then what happens? In my soul, in my heart, I know I'm meant to be working with this person. And then my ego says, yeah, but what about finances? And it's normal, right? Survival. It's here to protect me. It's here to help me survive. Yeah, but what about finances? You can afford this, but what about this other thing that you pay for? And what about no, you got to put your money in your savings account. It needs to be there so that in the future you can retire. And narrative. And all of a sudden what happens? I don't work with the person because my ego says, nope, I can't do this. This is too scary. I can't do this. It is not safe for me to do this. I need to get away. No. Right? As opposed to the soul, who, if I were to communicate with my soul, would say, okay, I know that I'm meant to learn from this person. Like I know it in my heart that this is the person I want to learn from. Okay, so this is how much the investment is. All right. This investment, it looks like, let's say, I'll make up a number here, $20,000. And let's say I'm earning $10,000, right? All right. So that is higher than what I'm earning. But do I want this? Yes, I want this. Is this important to me? Yes. Does it feel right? Yes. And so the soul is the one that asks the questions, how can I? How can I? If I know that this is a yes for me in my body from a soul expansion level, then how can I make this possible? How is this possible for me? And this, I find this so often. I remember when I invested in my first high ticket coach, it was end of 2019. And that's when I make the decision. And I remember January 2020, this was a $50,000 coach. And at the time I was, I think like my highest income month at the time had been like 20K or something like that. And so it was very scary. I was like, oh my God, that's 3 months of salary. What do I do? And my ego's like, nope, bad idea. Don't do it. Abort mission. Get away. And my soul was like, this is it. This is my next level. This is my next level. And so instead of operating, and thank God this coach was like knew about this and she was able to coach me and to listen to what the bigger picture here, listen to your heart, zoom out, feel what the truth is for you. And the truth for me was that, yes, I was ready to work with this person. And when I decided yes, and I committed to this, I remember it was January and I was holding my best friend's hand as I submitted a $20,000 deposit, which at the time was like a month's salary for me. And I was crying of fear. I was so scared because my ego was having an ego death. It was experiencing an ego death because my ego said, I don't spend this kind of money. I definitely don't spend this kind of money on mentorships. And it is unsafe for me to spend this kind of money. And when I was able to overcome that fear, I submitted this payment. And I remember this was January. And within a month, February, I had my first $50,000 income month. And I could have never imagined. But what happened in that moment when I pressed yes to that credit card payment is I became the woman who invests in herself in that level. I became the woman who listens to her soul on that level. I became the woman who overcomes her biggest fears and overcomes the limitations of her ego to do what she knows is best for her in her soul. And I can't tell you how many times this was me being on the receiving end of it and being the client. But I cannot tell you, like literally 3 days ago, I got a message with a client who invested in me and she paid in full. And she messaged me that we had a session. And the next day she's like, I just signed my first $11,000 client. $11,000 client. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not surprised. Why? Because in my world, not only from on my side when I invest in things, but also with clients, it's normal. It is completely normal for a client to never have seen a certain kind of number of money in their life, and then they invest in a program with me, and then 1 month later, even a couple days later, 2 months later, boom, the investment's back, and they make more money than they've ever had in their entire life. Because this is not about leaning into the fears, but it's rather about listening to your soul's calling. And when you follow the steps of your soul, the question is, and it's actually a question that already has an answer because it's indubitable. Sorry, my English is not my first language. Indubitable, it's doubtless. Okay, you know what I'm saying. It's doubtless that when you follow, you truly are in alignment to your soul's calling. Your soul is going to support you with rising to the occasion and creating the reality that you're calling in. As long as your intention is pure, as long as it's truly coming from your soul, it's going to happen. And so there's been so many times in my career, there's this one time where I invested $35,000 on one VIP day to be coached by a woman who coaches billionaires. And at the time, again, it was like, I remember that this was like pretty close to what I was earning, like on average. And then I just was so scared. And then again, I did this work to overcome my ego and to actually understand what is my soul's truth. My soul's truth is that I need to be in a room with her. And then I remember that in that moment when I was doing like average, like 30 to 50K months. Sometimes I'd get the occasional 60, 70, and it was great. But when I sat with her, I remember that at the time I wanted to create a 6-figure offer and I didn't know how to do that. And I was so scared. Again, ego death, because I don't think I can be this person. I don't know I can be that. And I remember that this was February of 2022. And then within a month's time, I signed a 6-figure client. And then boom, that money came right back. And so again, it was all because I followed my soul's path and I rose to the occasion. Now, I'm specifically speaking about money right now because I know it's a really hot button for people, but this can be applied to love. This can apply to like a big challenge in your life, like, the move across the country, starting your own business, wanting to grow your business to the next level, like whatever your challenge looks like right now. What I just want to illustrate is that when we make a decision from our soul and we actually learn how to tell when the ego is obstructing us and obstructing our dreams, then what we're able to do is we're able to work with the ego and overcome the ego so we can continue being on our soul's path. But when we don't do that, we stay limited. And, for those of you who maybe are wondering, yes, Celine, but how do I know that it's my ego speaking and not my soul, in addition to like just listening to the language? So if the internal dialogue is, yeah, but I can't do this because and I'm not able to do it. It's when the ego is in its I'm going to protect you mode, I'm going to help you survive mode, the visceral feeling of that in your body is contraction. It's a contractive feeling. And I know that maybe some of you might be disconnected to your body, and that itself is like, you're going to need to learn the art of feeling emotion in your body. But the more you become attuned, the more obvious it becomes. So, part of your journey if you choose to live from your soul, it has to be getting reconnected to your physical body, because then you're able to listen to the cues of the physical body. And so the feeling is this feeling of contraction. Like I am contracted. I feel limited. Like I feel like I want this thing. I want to buy this house. I want to invest in this mentorship, or like I want to fall in love again, whatever the story is for you, but I can't because I'm afraid of getting hurt. I can't because there's not enough money. There's not enough. I'm not enough. But ... insert a limitation. But insert a limiting belief system that's keeping you small, and it's keeping you basically stuffed and stuck in the same place. It's a contractive, like, I want this, but I can't have it feeling. And that's how you know it's like that egoic inner critic narrative that's going on in your mind, as opposed to the soul. The soul is expansive. It feels open. It feels like, okay, I don't have this money right now, but how can I create the money? Okay, this is definitely scary and I recognize that. And I know it's for a bigger reason. So I'm going to lean into this fear and I'm going to overcome the challenge anyways. Okay, like this is challenging, this hurts, this whatever, whatever the narrative. And I'm going to create, it's an expansive, open feeling. It feels really, really good in your body. Like it's really like, it's like an exhale. Like I am capable, I can do this. Now, if I were to, for example, give you an example, the same example that I just gave you with investing, and I was going to give it to you from an ego is taking the lead perspective, it would look like this. Let's go back to that coach that I made that 50K investment on, right? In this case, I knew that this was my person, and I knew that working with this person was going to take me to the next level of my income, my business, and how I wanted to move forward in my life and my career. And I ended up working with that person for 2 years. And, looking back now, there is absolutely no doubt, like, of course, it was the best possible decision I could have made. I'm so happy I listened to my soul. I'm so happy that I didn't listen to my fears of not having, quote unquote, enough money or not earning enough money. But actually, like, I chose to invest in myself and take a bet on myself. And it absolutely paid off. The same way, for those of you who listened to my intro episodes, the first 2 episodes of this podcast, you'll know more about my story around couch surfing around the world, like quitting my corporate job to couch surf around the world. It was the biggest risk I took in my life, but I knew, even though I had zero evidence that it was going to work out, I didn't have there was no person, thing, or like anything to soothe my ego and tell me, hey, Celine, if you quit your job and travel the world for a year without like even knowing how to pay for your bills or like what countries to go to or where you're going to end up, like you're going to work out just fine. It's going to work out better than you ever imagined. Like there was no one to guarantee that. There was no stamp of guarantee. I took that leap of faith. I took one of the biggest risks of my life with an intuitive knowing and listening that if I walk the path of my soul, like it's just going to work out, full stop. And I listened to that, and reality rearranged itself. Energy, that 99.9999% rearranged itself to actually support this new belief system and this ego death that I went under. Wasn't painless. It wasn't easy. It was definitely challenging, but it was there. And so if I were to, for example, make the same decision from an egoic place, this is what it would look like. Let's say, let's go with this 50K coach, right? It would look like, ooh, I really like this 50K coach. Like she has so many followers on Instagram, and she's worked with like these celebrity people. So if I work with her, it means that I'm going to have people are going to know me as the person who like coaches under this person. And if I work with her and she's like this, and she makes, 7 figures, and she is really known on the internet, and she's really popular, and she coaches all these people, like if I associate myself with her, then people will think I'm like her, which means I can get more clients, which means I can market myself better, which means I can essentially leverage her brand to market myself better. So I hope you're seeing what I'm doing here. Like that is all ego. That's all. Like if I make this choice, then I get to validate myself. If I make this choice, then I feel better about myself. If I make this choice, then I can reinforce the identity that I want to have, to be more known, or to like be cooler, or to be more significant, to meet one of the core human needs, which are significance, certainty, uncertainty, love, and connection. And so if I take this decision, then I will get something that looks like this out of it. That is your ego controlling the situation. And there's been so many times, I even when, by the time I have some clients come to me like, oh my God, like there's heartbreaking stories of them like following their ego instead of their soul, and ending up in situations where they invest all this money in a coach, or they invest all this money on an investment, or, they go all in on this relationship that was completely based on their trauma bonding and completely based on like, I'm dating this person because of what I perceive like they're going to do for me, or who I'm going to be if I'm perceived to be seen next to them, or that I'm dating this person. And they end up putting themselves in all these like heartbreaking situations, these really challenging situations that put them in a shithole, to be frank, because they were listening to their egoic validation. And when you follow when you're just living life to validate your own egoic needs and desires, it does not work out well for you. It does not work well for you, because all you're doing is perpetuating a reality that is based on your past belief systems, that is based on your own freaking limitations. And when you are like running in the hamster wheel of your own self-imposed limitations, you can't grow and expand because you're not following like a bigger calling, and you're not actually plugging yourself into the magic of the unknown. And all you're doing is just living a familiar life again and again and again, and just repeating your same circumstances in different shapes and sizes. So of course, like if I were to make that decision from an egoic standpoint of I'm going to validate my own ego, if I do this, then I get this, then I would have wasted $50K. I would have thrown them right out the toilet, because it wouldn't, maybe I would have made more money. Maybe I would have learned some new skill set, but it wouldn't have been like, I could not have gotten the feeling that I got by following my soul's destiny, which was, oh my God, I am this person. Oh my God, I am capable of generating these amounts of money. Like, oh my God, like I'm I respect myself for the choice that I made. I am courageous. I can trust myself when I'm going into the unknown. Like I can lead myself in places that I don't know, I don't have a guarantee in. I can lead myself in places and spaces where nobody's guaranteeing me that it's going to work out. And that's the journey of the entrepreneur as well, the soul-led entrepreneur, which is, I feel like I honestly, the more I grow in my career and the easier it becomes and the more effortless it becomes, not because like my challenges get easier, but because the way I'm dealing with my challenges get easier. I'm not fighting them. I'm listening to my soul. I'm listening to my soul guidance. And as a result of listening to my soul guidance, I know what to do even when I don't know what to do. And the only times I get myself in a pickle in my life or my career is when I betray my own intuition. I don't listen to the language of my soul, and I do things to validate my ego. I do things so that I can feel big when I'm feeling small. I do things when I need to feel important and when I'm feeling unimportant. When I need to feel worthy because I'm feeling unworthy. When I hold myself back from saying yes to something, even though my soul is a full yes, I'm saying no because there's a narrative going on around, oh, well, I can't afford it. Or like, oh, well, I'm not that kind of person. Whatever the narrative is, the way that I operate today is I listen to my intuition. And when I'm disconnected from my intuition, my job is to come back into my soul center. There's a meditation that I do every single morning, and I teach this to my clients as well, which is, every morning I get realigned back into my soul. I recollect my emotional body. I recollect my physical body, my mental body. The whole team is in one place, aligned to my soul. And I ask myself, like, this is one of the mantras, and I shared this in the first episode as well, which is soul, spirit guides, angels, ancestors who wish me well, all the energies around me that are benevolent and want to support me. But most importantly, my soul. I am committed to walking the path of my highest possible soul destiny. What is my next step? And I never know what the next step is going to be. Sometimes it's nothing. But I listen to what my soul is telling me. And anytime I'm unplugged, I come back. And every step that I take, it's coming from my soul essence. It's coming from that guidance, because I know that as long as I take a step in my soul essence, there is no way I'm going to go wrong. No matter how scary it is, no matter if I think that I don't have the money, or I think that the love is not available for me, or I think that I'm not that kind of person, or I think that this is impossible for me, whatever I'm thinking, blah, 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 blah. As long as I reconnect to my soul and my intuition tells me, take this step, I'm going to do it. If it's a hell yes in my body, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do the scary investment. I'm going to have the scary conversation. I'm going to take the scary leap of faith. I'm going to do it because I have this faith, unwavering faith within me that comes from years and years of practice, that when I follow my soul, life works out better than I could have ever imagined. And that is why it's so important for me to lead with soul instead of relapsing into ego. My job is to get my soul in the driver's seat. And once she's in the driver's seat, baby, we are rolling. This car is cruising, and we are ending up in the best possible destination. If my ego's in the driver's seat, there's going to be a lot of bumps. There's going to be a lot of stop. There's going to be a lot of frustration. There's going to be a lot of anger. And there's going to be a lot of pushing a rock up against a boulder, only to bring it all the way back and have that thing roll right back down. And then I have to start over and be super mad about it. No, thank you. That is not how I want to live my life. So that is really like that difference between the ego And the soul is that the ego is the little you. The soul is the big you. It's the part of you that is just connected to everything that is and everything that ever was. And the soul is a forever, evolving mystery. I'm constantly exploring this essence that is me at my core, constantly unfolding. Like, I have no idea who my soul is, and I don't even know who I am and who I'm here to be in this lifetime, because I'm going to let life surprise me, but I know it is so much more than what I could ever possibly think, right? And that's one of the reasons why this podcast is nominated. For now, that's the name. It's not what you think. It's not what I think. I am not who I think I am. I am so much more than I think I am. And same for you. Like, you are so much more than you could ever think that you are. And the question is, are you willing to explore that? Are you open to actually allowing yourself to unfold over this lifetime? Is this something you desire? What is it that you truly desire in your soul and life? Because something I find so common when, one of the things I mentioned is that the first piece is that when I work with clients is I get them really clear on who's talking. And actually this decision starts, by the way, before they even work with me. I do not work with people unless they know they're going to work with me in their soul. And I take like my prospective clients through an entire process of like, listen, this is a big investment and it is a very transformative, time of your life. Like, the work we're going to do together is going to absolutely transform you. Here's the thing though, this cannot come from your ego. This investment cannot come from a space of, oh, I want to work with Celine because she's here, she's doing that, or this, it would do this for me. If I work with her, then I get this. It can't come from that. It needs to come from an essence of like, I know this is my person and I know this is my guide. And I use the same process when I choose to work with people or invest in companies or, whatever it is that I'm doing. I take myself through the same process and I ask them like, you need to speak to your soul. And if it's a soul yes, then we're on a roll. Then we get the work. Then we start the work, right? And, something else, like after you actually start to understand that discernment between ego and soul, which is really going to start getting you on the path to your soul destiny on this earth walk. Then once you're doing that, then the next piece is like, okay, well, what do you want? Like, what is it that you truly desire? And what I find to be so common is that most times we are so afraid to actually admit what we truly, truly want out of the fear that we won't be able to have it. And again, that's the ego that says, don't talk about this. Don't admit this to yourself because we're never going to be able to do this in the lifetime. But again, that is the ego talking. Because from the ego, predictability, if you want to have a multi-million-dollar home and you are working in a job that's creating $50,000 a year, your ego, operating out of survival and not wanting its own annihilation, is going to say, well, you earn $50,000 a year, so it's going to take you like 50 years to save up for this house. Therefore, by your lifetime, you're not going to be able to afford this house. So just forget about the house that you want to live in, that beautiful multi-million house in front of the beach. Forget about that. Toss that out the window because you're not going to be able to have it. And I don't want you to be disappointed. So let's just settle for the smaller thing instead. And let's just be happy with that. And then some people live their entire life, by the way, they on their deathbed with that belief system of limiting themselves in that way. Because if they had listened to their soul, it would be a different conversation. It would be like, okay, what if I get to have the $1 million home? That's what I really, really, really want. That beautiful home that I construct myself in front of the beach. What if I really, 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 really want that? How can I make this possible for me? How is this available for me? How is this a possibility for me in the quantum field? And when you start opening your mind like that and you start to operate on a different frequency of this is possible for me, and as opposed to this is not possible, so let me shove it down. When you start to make that shift in frequency, what happens is that you sort of, whoa, what goes on? And then a few months go by and you're like, maybe this job isn't right for me. Huh, interesting. Oh my God, I just had this really good idea. What if I start that hobby I have? What if I start a side business on it? And you start a side business, and all of a sudden this business explodes. And all of a sudden you're a multimillionaire in less than a year. How did that happen? It's because you chose to listen to your soul and you chose to believe that there's more to life than the egoic limitation you were placing on yourself. And the assumptions that you made that if you copy and paste your life now into the future, of course you're going to get the same result because you haven't shifted, you haven't changed, you haven't evolved. But when you start to listen to your soul, things change. They're different. You start to put things in motion that you can't possibly think or predict in your mind's eye. You can't predict it because it's so much bigger than you, because now the entire universe, that 99.99999%, starts to work for you. It starts to actually expand you and create a reality that you never previously imagined was even possible for you. So understand that when we're looking at your ego, all it is that three-dimensional, up-to-date, it's up-to-date from your past to present, but your soul is the one that's plugged across all timelines, baby. Time is relevant. There is no such thing. It is an illusion. And soul knows your past, present, your future. It knows where you want to go. But the question is, are you going to let it lead you on this lifetime? And how long are you going to wait until you start to listen to yourself in that way? This is the practice. So first piece is just becoming aware of this. If you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I never thought about it this way, then amazing. Start to notice and become aware of the ways that the ego is in the driver's seat of your life, or when the soul is the one leading. And the way you do that is you start to listen to the language, the inner dialogue that's going on. It's going to give you a huge clue as to who's talking. The other way you do that is you start to listen to your body. I'm sure all of you have had something that it's like such a fuck yes. So you're like, yes, I want this. Have you ever had this moment that you said, yes, 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 I want this, I want this, I want this. And either you go and you get it and you overcome really big fears in order to do that, or your logical brain kicks in the moment you say yes. And then your logical survival brain is like, yeah, but you can't do that. You can't do that because what about this responsibility? And what about this thing? And what about that other thing? Like, no. And then you basically cut yourself off from your yes. And you disconnect from it, which is really freaking painful. And it breeds regret, resentment, anger, fear, all those emotions, low vibrational emotions that actually continue to further separate you from the reality that you desire. You just create more and more separation because you're listening to the ego and you're not listening to yourself, to your soul. Yourself with a large S. Ego, small s, little s. Self, soul, large S. What would happen if you just listened, right? So you have this feeling, this visceral feeling in your body. And that's how you know, like, okay, here's the language, here's the feeling in my body. This is what I want. This is a fuck yes for me. So knowing that it's a fuck yes for me, how can I make this possible? How can I entertain the reality in the quantum that this is actually available for me and I can have it, and time just needs to catch up? And you start to shift the way that you think and you perceive the reality in that way. Reality will start to meet you in that way as well, because all it is just a reflection of your belief system, right? And so that's the first piece. That's the first, let's say, step, which in and of itself has many steps within it. The second piece is getting really clear on what is it that you truly desire. Are you willing to be courageous enough to admit what your soul desires? Is it the multi-million-dollar Rome? I'm from Rome. That multi-million home in front of the beach? Is it to spend the rest of your life with your soulmate, even though your ego is telling you that, love is not available to you in that way, but you actually truly, truly desire it. So you lie to yourself and you create a life where you date around or you settle for certain people because you don't actually want to admit how much you desire to walk your path with a soulmate, right? Is it that you want to create a business that just creates millions and millions and millions of dollars, and you can use that money to provide your children with the life that they want, to buy yourself a Chanel bag if that's what you want to do, to, retire your husband, retire your wife, to whatever it is that you want to do. Like, what is it that your soul truly desires? And underneath that, behind that, like once you actually get real on what are the things that your soul desires to experience on a 3D material plane, you take it a step further and you ask yourself, why? Why do you desire these things? Like, what's deeper than that? And then you ask why? And it usually, like, we humans, we have something in common. We're all returning back to love. We all deeply yearn to return back to this feeling of love and belonging and I am worthy. We're not so different, right? And when you can connect this feeling that you're actually seeking, this feeling of I want to feel alive in this lifetime. I want to feel joyful. I want to feel in love. I want to feel connected. And what it is that you truly want to feel, what that signature looks like for you. And the way that I want to experience this in this lifetime looks like that cabin in the woods that I'm sharing with my partner. It looks like, that traveling all over the world with my kids. It looks like building a really successful business and having access to different beautiful minds around the world. Like whatever that looks like for you, remember that there's like a deeper soul desire in there as well. So that's thing number 2. And then the third piece, which is where, the challenge comes in, is what is in the way of that? What is in the way of that? And this is really where we go into that area that I take my clients through that journey through the underworld, which is the subconscious reprogramming process of really understanding like what are the belief systems that are directly interfering with you accessing your soul, with you being in your body with your soul, and also accessing like the desires that you want. Is it a belief system that you are never going to make more than a certain amount of money in this lifetime? Is it a belief system that you're not worthy of love? Is it a belief system that it's too hard, like you have to work really hard and you don't have energy to work hard? Like whatever the belief systems are. And when I work with clients, I find that there's many of those, like all coagulated, and part of our work is doing some serious spring cleaning and really identifying what are the core belief systems that are actually like directly interfering with the things that you desire. And then we need to clear them. We need to become aware of them, and we need to clear them through the body, like through the nervous system. And that's something that I can talk about in future episodes, like how do you actually clear belief systems through your body and through your nervous system, because we got to let it go like on a visceral level for us to really like be liberated of our own conditioning. And so once you figure out what's in the way, the next step is really like, okay, what's the next step? What is the action? Right? The beautiful thing about being these spiritual beings incarnated into physical reality is that physical reality has its own rules. And for us to actually get shit done, we need to like do something, right? So the first piece is belief system. It's changing who you be. It's shifting who you be into somebody who actually, yes, this reality is available for me. Yes, there is another way. Yes, I can do it. But once you shift how you be, then you got to like do. You got to actually take an action in your life, whether it looks like quitting the job, whether it looks like asking that person out, whether it looks like, going online and looking at those houses, looking at the real estate market. Like you got to do something in order to materialize it into reality. And when you do this in a way that is in alignment, you get to do things intentionally from your soul. And that's how things become effortless, because you can waste less of your time and precious life force energy like pushing a rock against a boulder. And if you listen to your soul, you actually can do less than you ever thought you could. Like, a lot of people come to me and they're working so freaking hard. And they're like, how do I work like less than 20 hours a week? And it's like, well, stop it with the addictions of having to work so freaking hard and do from your ego, because you're just wasting your breath. Doing from your ego. You need to first focus on being and tapping into the new belief system. Once you really feel like you're connected to that next identity of who you are, then you take intentional action. And because that connection is in alignment to the new identity, it's just naturally going to be the right next thing to do. And you can you can just stop wasting time running around in circles and doing all the stuff that you don't actually need to be doing. All of that drops and life gets significantly easier. And that's how I've been able to cut down my workload from 40, 50 plus hours a week to, 28 less hours. And I'm continuously streamlining because I'm getting more intentional with my actions, and I'm getting more meticulous and precise around following my soul and intentionally acting from my soul instead of knee-jerking from my ego. So, wow, this time has flown by. So just to start to wrap things up, this is what I mean when, it's really important to know the difference between who is in charge. Is it your soul that's in charge, or is it your ego? When you're operating from your ego, you are going to be operating from a space of limitation and a space of your current reality, and you're being informed by your past conditioning, and your past belief systems. And guess what? If you don't have what you desire right now, there is a separation between who you are right now and the version of you who already has what you desire. There's a separation. The gap needs to be closed. So if you are unwilling to go through a few ego deaths, if you're unwilling to transcend your ego and its desires and its needs and its survival defense mechanisms, if you're unwilling, you are going to stay there. And your past, your future is going to look like your past. Like there's not much that's going to change. But if you're looking to create significant transformation in your life, you've got to transcend the ego, get plugged back into your soul. And like I said before, listen to your soul, right? Like stay connected to what it is that you truly desire from your soul, not from your ego, from your soul. Not that I want to have a really nice car so I can post about it on Instagram so that everybody can know I'm cool. But rather, I want to buy this car because I love this brand. I love everything that it stands for. I would love to like take my partner around on weekend trips, and there's a beautiful car and I just absolutely love the aesthetics. It's exquisite. I love the quality of it. Like it makes me feel so alive when I drive this thing, right? That's the different textures. And then do the work to figure out what is in the way. And then from that space, you got to take some intentional action towards your dreams and towards your goals. But step number 1 is listening to your soul and following your soul's direction. Trust me, you cannot go wrong from this space. You just can't. So, there's so much more that I could say about this, but I want to save it for future episodes. And I'm going to be talking about this in different scenarios. So yeah, that's what I want to leave you with today. Just this reflection of what areas in your life are you really operating and limiting yourself from your ego? And what areas of your life are you operating from your soul? And what is something in your life that your soul is really calling you towards that you are cutting yourself off from because of the stories that your ego is creating around why you can't have it and why it's not available to you, why it's not worthy? And are you willing and desiring to transcend and overcome that and get back into the path of your soul's highest destiny? Because it's more fun. It's more effortless. It's more fun. It's a more beautiful way of being and living. I'm not just saying this as the soul embodied as Celine DaCosta, but this embodiment of Celine DaCosta also happens to, work with a lot of people who have gone through this journey. And trust me, I haven't had a single person tell me, oh, I liked it the other way when like I was limiting myself and my ego. Like that one's so much better, so much better. I definitely have a 100% return rate of, wow, this is such a better way to live. I love it now. Moving forward, right? So wrapping up this episode, for those of you listening, thank you so much for showing up today, for listening. I would be really curious to hear your thoughts and to really see what came up for you in this episode. So definitely, take a screenshot of this episode, share it with me on Instagram at Celine DaCosta and your other social media channels. Let me know what your thoughts are. And please, if you love this episode, make sure that you go and you give this podcast a subscribe as well as a 5-star rating. Why? Because it helps us so much with getting this podcast and this message in front of more people. It supports us with getting the word out as well as, luring in some really incredible guests. So, thank you so much for listening today. And please, the invitation here is to continue following your soul. Be aware of the ways that your ego is limiting you. And remember, you get to choose. You get to choose to follow your soul into your highest possible destiny. Thank you so much. And until next time. Mwah.
Thank you, beautiful humans, for tuning into today's episode of It's Not What You Think. If you loved what you received today, make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss out on future episodes, and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts as it helps us reach even more amazing listeners like you. If we aren't already connected on social media, come receive even more tips and inspiration by following me on Instagram at Celine DaCosta or visiting my website at celinedacosta.com. After listening to this episode, I invite you to take a few moments to reflect. What stood out to you? What were your key takeaways or breakthroughs? And if there was one action step you could take from this, what would it be? Thank you again for joining me on this journey. I'm sending you so much love, and I can't wait to connect in the next episode. Until then, keep sharing your unique gifts and living out your most magical life.